Hello and welcome back to Reactivity TV. I'm Amy Albero and I'm a licensed therapist.
I'm Catherine Van Eyck, and I'm also a licensed therapist.
Yes.
I am not Chris. I am also not replacing Chris. Let's all not freak out here.
Yes, but you're here. I finally have another therapist to get some takes with. You do have a lot of opinions too, okay? So
I
like
do have a lot of opinions. If you want me here for the opinions, I can give the opinions.
yes, but on a recent episode of Reactivity TV, Chris really wanted to discuss the bear and he didn't indicate that like he should be here to discuss the bear. So
No. He explicitly asked me to do it.
So Chris, ask and you shall receive. I'm so happy to have you with me today. We're talking about The Bear season 3, and who better to talk about The Bear with than you, someone who's watched this show along with me for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, we did 2 other The Bear recaps and gave our therapist reactions to those, so it's only fitting. We had to come and do it again.
Yes. So we are going to be talking about season 3 in its entirety. So we're not going to be going episode by episode. Of course, we're not going to hit every single thing that happened in season 3. But we're going to kind of be sharing our main takeaways as therapists, things that we saw generally throughout the season, things that we saw across some of the characters, and kind of give our overall take. So this is kind of our general overview of our therapist perspectives about season 3 of The Bear.
Okay, where do you want to begin?
Well, I mean, since you volunteered your opinion, what was your opinion? What was your experience like watching the show this season?
Okay, opinion, blah. I messaged Amy this too when I was watching. I was like, I just want to be entertained, and I'm not entertained right now. That's it. If we're strictly looking at am I entertained, I was not. I was so bored. I was so annoyed and frustrated. Okay, yeah, it gave me all these feelings, and we can talk about those. But viewer, bored. Therapist, allowed to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I like that you are talking about it from, two different parts of your identity here. I have to say, I loved this season. And I know that from a viewer perspective, this was a lower rated season than the previous 2. Like last season was just so good, and the novelty of it in season 1 was just amazing. But there was something I really enjoyed about this episode, or this season rather. I loved kind of seeing the origin story of many of the characters. I mean, we've gotten to see that with Carmy, but we got to see it a little bit more with these other characters. And I loved that. I mean, and maybe that's like where my Amy self and my therapist self like collide, is like, I just find it so fascinating to try to understand like why people are the way that they are. And
okay, I will say I do like that, and I think it's funny that there's that crossover here between Wishing You Well and Reactivity TV. We talk about people's stories all the time on Wishing You Well. We hear people's stories all the time in sessions with clients. I just was like, I don't want to hear all of these stories in one show. I just want to hear the story. I want to hear Carmy. I want to hear Sydney. Let's make all those other things their own show. But like, don't take up an entire episode talking about freaking like Marcus and what's going on for him, and like just no, it's just too much. Stick to the program.
No, Catherine, you're a family therapist. You're a systemic thinker. Like, that what's going on with Marcus in his life directly impacts what's going on in the restaurant and with Carmy. And there's like a symbiosis. So you want Carmy to be the main character, and everyone else like really is a background character.
Well, okay, this is the like optimistic therapist in me of wanting things to be tied up with a shiny bow at the end,
Mm.
which is also really unrealistic. If we just followed Carmy, we'd see him, go apologize to Claire and they'd make up and live happily ever after. The show would get the restaurant would get the best review. It would be the best restaurant ever. Like, that's what I want to see. And maybe it's just because we don't see that in real life that I just like to escape into that
Mhm.
in fantasy world of TV.
Yeah, right. Like that wish fulfillment. Yeah, fantasy, this escape from reality. That's what The Bachelor's for,
Oh,
Like
right. Okay.
but yeah, I mean, I think yeah, this I think what we're both saying is this season felt really different than the previous two seasons. And right before we started recording, I had, asked Catherine if she finished the season. And then we were both kind of saying, like, in a sense, it wouldn't really matter so much because not a lot actually happened. Like in the present, not so much got pushed forward in terms of plot. We saw a couple of months, but again, for the most part, they stayed pretty flat in terms of progress. We just saw that they stayed in this steady state of chaos and stress and panic and uncertainty and conflict. Like that remained true. There was very little shift to that at all in the present timeline. And so there was no big culminating factor where we got left on this cliffhanger, perhaps, about whether or not the restaurant would have the good review so that Uncle Jimmy could keep funding it. But other than that, we had a pretty flat season.
That really gets you at TV too. Like, give me something to keep me going other than like, is something going to happen? Like, that's not what I like. This is just, yeah.
Right. You wanted to be entertained with a forward moving plot.
Yes, thank
a
you.
happy ending, maybe.
Maybe you should have created this. Yes.
Well, I'm the one who's like, yeah, let's sit in the suffering. Let's
Why do you want to torture yourself?
I don't know. I need a therapist. Okay, so who else dates a therapist is Carmy. So maybe we can talk about him a little bit. What did you see as what was going on for Carmy this season?
Okay. What didn't I see? All right. We'll start with how what we've seen carried through in all 3 seasons at least is Carmy not being able to get out of his own way. And that just became so much more profound this season as he totally isolated himself and just built up that many more walls to everybody else. So there's that.
Agree. Yes. He really turned like into himself and kind of like turtled, like he went into this like self-protective, self-preservation mode, and shut everyone out with this like hard shell, hard exterior around him.
And you know what I'm thinking about now as I'm like reflecting even more about this. If we were the type of therapist, which you and I are not, who were very pathologizing, and for those watching, that just means like basically throwing a diagnosis at somebody and slapping on this label to them and saying like, this is who you are and let's work within those bounds. We're not those therapists. But if I was that therapist, I might look at Carmy, I might look at even Natalie and say that there are some traits of OCD here. We could look at the perfectionism that Carmy shows throughout the entire season. We can also then look at Sugar and Natalie when she's talking to Dee Dee in the hospital while she's in labor about that constant thought pattern that's in her head about making sure everyone's okay and asking everybody how they're doing, and that that line of questioning and that thought pattern is very, very OCD like. And so that's very interesting if we were to take that pathologizing approach and look at these two characters in a vacuum. But we're not, because we are systemic thinking therapists here. And what we do know is that the experiences that they've had and the people around them, their family, their friends, these people are really playing a role in who they are and how they experience life and the symptoms that might be occurring for them. So Carmi's perfectionism and Natalie's incessant need to have her mother's approval and other people feeling all right around her. Those things are really tied to their greater systems.
Right, right. And we see a little nod to that when Natalie gets in the car on her way to get the Seafolds and she's listening to a podcast or an audiobook about children of alcoholics and how they take on certain traits. And just as you're saying, whether it's growing up in a home where there was substance misuse or substance dependency, or just growing up with a lot of chaos, which we definitely saw in season 2 when Dee Dee drove the car through through the house on Christmas Eve, like there was a lot of chaos. And so as a way that children particularly, but just individuals try to cope with that reality are through these other ways of trying to gain some sense of control. Carmy through his perfectionism and Natalie through being the caretaker, trying to control in that way, control her environment and control everyone around her from coming from the most, empathic way, of course, but like just wanting everything to be okay.
Yes.
And
wanting to find control, and also, and sorry if this like tangents us too much, but like also thriving off of that chaos to an extent, because it's almost like so innate to them at this point that they're seeking it out, and they're like feeding off of it in all of these different areas. Like when Natalie is going through labor and she's saying, I just want peace, I just want serenity here. At the same time, like she's so used to that chaos that like she then feeds into it. She's like, all right, I'll do the hee-hees and ha-has, like I'll do those. And Carmy, and every single night at the restaurant, it is chaos with Richie, with Sydney, with everybody. It's like so hard to watch as a viewer, but like makes total sense around like what they're used to and what they're accustomed to in their family life.
For sure. I mean, it's comfortably uncomfortable. And we do seek out familiarity, even when it looks like that. A restaurant, especially being in the kitchen in a restaurant, is one of the most chaotic places that you could be. And he chooses that, like, emphatically by opening a restaurant. And so you're right. Like they are both kind of drawn to and magnetized by chaos. And again, the Fack family, they are chaos in and of themselves, and they are so embedded in their Berzotto family and in the Bear restaurant. And again, that just invites more and more chaos. Richie is chaos. Like it's just they kind of absorb it all.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, even Tina found solace in the chaos, like when she got to the restaurant and was offered this job, and she's like she fell into it, but like embraced it. And so that's really interesting too. And I guess the therapist part of me would be interested to learn, why that is, like what more to her story would attract her to that, because she was looking for stability. And so to her, there must be some sort of stability in chaos. So
right.
Interesting.
Well, and the juxtaposition there, right? Like she is so regimented and so routine. And that's what she even says to Mikey, like, I just need a routine. And then she like goes in eyes wide open with Mikey, full disclosure. Like, this is what it is. There's a lot of yelling. It sucks. And she's like, all right, like sign me up. And she's excited for it. And yeah, maybe there is something else in her past that drove her to crave structure. And now like there's this other option that maybe again is familiar in a different way. But then there's the other side that can also be like, okay, this structure, this regimen, this routine wasn't working for me. Let me just like throw it out the window and try something completely different. And so, yeah, maybe season 4, we'll get a deeper origin story for Tina.
Mhm.
But no, that's a really, really good point. She really opts into this chaos for sure. So Carmy starts this season. We see him right at it's meant to open right after the opening of the restaurant, right after he and Claire have this breakup, right after he and Richie have this fallout, and he's been locked in the walk-in for however long that was. He misses his entire opening night. And then he immediately starts writing down all of these non-negotiables. And like it's pages long. Like what was your take about that? Like that's how we opened up this season.
I mean, again, going back to this seeking a sense of control, he's grasping at what he can. He missed the opening night. He missed everything, and now at coming off of that, he wants to make sure that he can have a say in everything because he missed everything. And because he has this greater goal of making everything so perfect and getting that star and being the best. So he has this idea of what it takes to get there. And it's all of these things that he learned from, his past mentors and the people who traumatized him in the past. They were really influencing him to be who he is and where he wants to get the restaurant to be.
Right. Yeah. It's like in some ways it's a fantasy of his own. Like, and it's also a setup for failure in a lot of ways because like the list is so long and it's so
And it's made by him. He's not getting any
right.
kind of help from anybody. Actually, everyone else hates these,
Yes.
especially
Yeah.
Richie.
Right. Well, and they all look at them and they're like, this isn't possible. Like, this is setting us up for failure. Like, there's no way not only to do all of these, but to do all of these perfectly is a setup. To change the menu every single day and execute it perfectly is so hard. And yet he will not settle for anything less. And it's almost like he is creating an environment where the only thing he can do is fail. It's such a self-sabotage move. And I think we all, to some degree can do this in our life when we so badly don't want to fail. And so we try to insulate ourselves with all of these safeguards that like try to keep us from failing, but they end up making it that much harder to be successful. It just, yeah, Carmy is not helping himself here and not helping his staff either.
So true. What is it called? Hormesis, that the things that also the things that help you to like be healthy also end up, like, killing you. Like too much of a good thing can actually.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's exactly like this. It's just like, all right, some structure is good, right? Like we need to have some ground rules to have a very well-established restaurant and business. But if you take it to such an extreme, it's down to not be able to meet those expectations.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I want us to pivot in a second to talk about Sydney, but I think it's also relevant before we talk about Sydney to also talk about some other stuff that's going on with Carmy as it relates to his own trauma that's coming through here, and in the way that he is not only trying to control and manage his environment, but it's really clear we see through so many flashbacks that he has Chef David, in his head. We see all of the times that Chef David is berating him, telling him he's not good enough, telling him he's horrible, that he's slow, that he's not cut out for this, that like all of the things that he had heard time and time again and started to internalize and believe. And it's almost as though this list is a way to counteract that, those ideas and those beliefs about himself. Like, if only I can do all of these things, then I will prove Chef David wrong, that I am actually good at this. I am actually worthy. And so we see him like strive to prove his worthiness to this ghost of Chef David, who we actually meet in the flesh later in the season.
Yeah, what did you think of that interaction when Carmy approached him?
Oh gosh. I was, in some ways it was anticlimactic, but in other ways I think that was the point. Um, but you saw Carmy like, so Carmy gets the validation that he finally was looking for. He hears Chef David say to him, "You were an excellent chef, and you're excellent because of the shit that I put you through." And I think it's such a sick and twisted thing to hear, because you finally got everything that you were searching for, and you got it at the demise or of yourself, of your sense of self, of your self-confidence, of your the cost of your relationships, all of that stuff. But the sick thing about it is now he can justify, oh, like this way of treating myself, of telling myself I'm not good enough, of telling myself I'm a piece of shit, of telling myself that I just need to keep going because I suck. Oh, that actually does work. That actually does make me more successful. And I worry that he is consciously or not applying that to Chef Sydney. We see that he was nurtured by some incredible chefs throughout his career, like beautiful mentorship, and then Chef David. And the way that he's treating Sydney is very similar to the way that Chef David treated him. And so, like, that kind of trauma, the cycle of trauma, I guess, lives on with Sydney.
Ah, so true. Yeah, he's really passing that along.
Mhm.
And that's really, really sad. And also, I wonder if she's not far into it enough where she's willing to put up with it, even though Carmy at first was like her dream chef to work with. And now she's really seeing the realities of that. And she's
Mhm.
battling with, do I stay or do I go? I have this other opportunity where this person really sees me and sees what I'm capable of. And I'm not sure Carmy does. And
Mhm.
because he does treat me this way, he doesn't treat me like a partner. He doesn't treat me like I'm really a part of this. Um, I'm also wondering off of that interaction if, yes, like, does it give Carmy permission to continue doing this? But also, like, was it just super unsatisfying to him to hear everything else that Chef David had to say, because he missed he could have had the excellent part go in one ear and now the other one.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if he all he ended up hearing was the like what a jackass this guy is, because he's just painted this picture about him for so long that I think that Chef David could have said anything to him and he would have just had his he would have just had his mind made up already.
Mhm.
And so I think like it was this moment for him that he thought he was going to get something. Like, I thought that this moment was going to be big. He even said, like, I don't know what I was going to say past fuck you, but like,
Mhm.
that's all I
Mhm.
got. He thought that he was going to gain so much from this interaction, and what he really got from it was what? Like, I thought that this was going to be a moment for me that was a turning point. Like, I needed this from him, but what I really needed was this from me all along. Like, I really
Mhm.
need to give myself this validation, but he doesn't know that. Like, he doesn't know that he's really seeking it in the wrong place.
Mhm. Right, right. We do see Carmi have this like reaction to this conversation, and there was a part of me that hoped, like, okay, maybe he can feel like relieved of this, resolved of this, or like released from it. Like, it was holding such a weight on him, but I don't think it did that. And it was just, as you were talking, it was making me think about another part of their interaction when Carmi says, after he says, like, I don't know what I was going to say to you beyond fuck you. I think about you too much. And then Chef David says, I don't think about you at all. And it just made me think of like how many times in our lives do we ruminate over an interaction or maybe a person who said something about us or to us. And we do build them up to be this huge, villainous monster in our minds. And then if we ever do face them again, they're just like, we never meant that much to them. We never took up that much space to them. And we were confronted with that reality of like, oh, this, I've revolved my life around this. And it's actually, it means nothing to this other person. Like that could be such a heartbreak in and of
Shattering.
itself.
Yeah.
Shattering. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think was going on with Sydney? What I'll say is when Chris and I watched this season, two things that he kept saying is like, what is the deal with the facts and getting haunted? And what the heck is going on with Sydney this season? And he felt really annoyed by Sydney. And her ambivalence, he had called it. What was your read on Sydney this season?
Yeah, I think ambivalent is a great way to describe sure, Chris has his opinions, but he's spot on. I think that she, like we were saying with Carmy, she's really stuck in this place of like, what am I doing? And it's coming out in everything. It's coming out in her speech patterns and all of her interactions with everybody, that even in her, let's say like her interaction with Marcus, they're sitting on the stoop of his mom's house, and he starts to say like, I'm really sorry about before, and she doesn't even let him truly apologize or like truly get to where he wants. And then there was another interaction in the kitchen with Carmy where he said he wants to try to make it so things aren't so difficult in working with him. And he just scratches the surface of like what could actually be a really vulnerable moment for Carmy. Whether or not he was going to go there, who knows? But she doesn't prompt him to. Like, she doesn't prompt Marcus to either. It's like she's keeping everybody at this arm's length as well as she's feeling like she's at arm's length with Carmy. And she's doing that, I'm sure, as part of this, like, is it easier to cut ties if I keep my distance? And also there's this just like constant kind of like getting away from, like, even she gets away from her dad, who it seems like he could not be more loving and more nurturing, and he wants just to hang on to her. And yeah, like, okay, is it maybe a good time to launch? Sure. Okay, if we're like keeping structure here with societal standards. But at the same time, like, is it a good idea for her to go, like, when there's some instability in her life and when she's not really sure what her next move is, and she doesn't even know what technically, like, what her salary is, like, are there actual practical things that make sense for her to be making that move? Maybe not. So is it just emotion driven where she's just feeling like, I need to be in my own place? I need to be on my own. I need to isolate. Ooh, oh my God, she's mirroring Harmony. Oh my God, she's just mirroring him. You did it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting watching their parallels throughout the seasons. And the thing that I was having a hard time trying to read, again, I find her pretty difficult to read as well, but she got the partner agreement in episode 1. And she, by episode 10, still hadn't signed it, and it's been months. And so what do you think it is that keeps her from opening it and from signing it? Do you think it's like her not wanting to take the risk of going all in on herself again because her last business failed? Do you think it's about her not being able to trust Carmy that keeps her from like wanting to even know what he would be offering her, or maybe be disappointed with what the offer was, but not wanting to leave Carmy? So it kind of like stays in this state of not knowing. What do you think?
I mean, I just think her indecisiveness is just like off the charts in everything that she is doing this season, that it just, as Marcus would say, and as kids these days saying, it tracks. Like,
Mhm.
everything that she um is like battling from, like leaving this, dream situation of working with someone that she's idolized, and like be sort of just like being propelled into this world of chefs. And that was like really shown in that last episode when she's at dinner with everybody. Like, I'm here, like I made it to an extent. And so like there's just, then there's like, she probably still feels tied to the other people in the restaurant. Like, she's mentoring Tina, and she does have this connection with Marcus in another way, and she's in it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I see how difficult of a decision it is for her to fully plant herself there, at the same time trying to do what's best for her and what's best for her career in that arc. Uh
Yeah.
there's just so much going on there for her. I see how hard it must be.
Right. Well, and the other thing we hear Carmy, when speaking to the facts, refer to Claire as the Peace, Peace, as he makes sure to be direct about. But in the restaurant, Sydney is the piece. She is the one that holds Carmy grounded, and she knows that. And that's a lot of responsibility to put on Sydney. That is a lot. And maybe there is a point where it's like, oh, to sign up to be in a partnership with someone, knowing this would be my role, like, do I really want that? And what will that do to my career if my main function is to help this guy keep his shit together and him get all the credit, kind of thing. Like, that's a
Yeah, I mean,
lot to sign up for.
she say at some point, like, don't make me be a babysitter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's doing that in so many different ways. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. She's really just emotional babysitter for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Right. Speaking of babies, let's talk a little bit about the labor scene and that dynamic between Natalie and her mom, Dee Dee.
Wow. Okay. First of all, when she said, when it said calling mom, or like when Siri announced that at the end of that episode, I was like, really? Like, you wouldn't rather go through this alone with knowing your relationship with your mom?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there were two things there. It was like, do I know what I could get out of this in this very unknown situation by going through it by myself, because I know what I can do for me and what I can bring me? Or do I bring in the chaos that I know, or think, because it didn't really happen, but like, that I think will be there because I'm so familiar with it, and just go with that so I can have a partner in this in some way? And she went she went with it. She went with that because I think underneath it there was still that feeling of like, will this situation be different?
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a great example of an adult child still seeking out that motherly, attachment that it was missing there for so long, and
Mm-hmm.
like all of her life. And so I have to imagine that there was part of her that was like, at one of the biggest moments in my life, can my mom really show up for me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
let me test that out.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. And did it work out to an extent, in a sense? Yeah. Like, that was one of those moments that I was like, yes, I got what I wanted out of this shit. Like,
Uh,
something changed.
yeah.
That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
I cried this whole episode. This was heart-wrenching to watch, and we get this interaction shortly after. I don't remember if it was in this episode at the beginning or in the previous episode, where Carmy is in an Al-Anon meeting, and we're hearing just a voiceover of someone talk about, my mom is getting sober and she's, apologizing to me, and like, I'm not ready to accept her apology because I still have to live with all of the things that she did when she was, when she was drunk or when she was, under the influence. And like, I still need to carry that around. And so I was feeling like that's what we were seeing happening with Natalie, like her mom, like so much, like really leaning in and wanting to take care of her, and Natalie just still feeling like that mix of like wanting her mom but feeling so hurt and wanting to keep her mom at arm's length and maybe punish her a little bit, but feeling so untrusting, and scared to let her mom in and take care of her. That was just the tension between the two, and the tension within herself, watching that the whole episode. And then finally, like when Natalie let out her first he, I was like, oh my God, this is really beautiful. The other thing I found, just in speaking of ways that people who grow up in particular types of households like can take on certain traits. We see Natalie here take on the parent role in some way with her mom. There are times that like she would like distract her mom a little bit, like tell me a story, or like, hey, can you go get me ice chips? Or, there things like that as a way to kind of keep her mom contained and grounded and okay. And so we see, even while Natalie is literally in labor, she's still kind of being a parentified child in some way. But that was like one of my favorite.
Interesting. I saw it as the opposite. I saw her like giving in to her mom, letting her mom help her. Like, tell me a story was almost like let me be the kid and like let me just like listen to you. And also the go get me ice chips thing was like a, can you like continue to take care of me?
Yeah.
Here.
Okay.
But I think it could be either way.
I like that. I like that. I'll go with that. I'll go with that. And maybe there is a little bit of both in there too. But I loved seeing that growth in their relationship, and who knows how long it will remain.
I could have watched them make eye contact for an entire episode.
Yeah, I know. That was incredibly like performed. It really, really was.
And Natalie and Carmy love the single tear.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Good job. You get another Emmy for that. Before we end, one last thing that I guess I wanted to ask you about was, there was all of this conflict, with Carmy and Claire and Carmy and Richie. And that was, again, something that kind of stayed flat throughout the entire season. I mean, why do you think that Carmy didn't just apologize, or neither side kind of gave in? Like, what do you think that was about?
Well, I love the instruction from Thack and how he was just like saying how easy it is, and how Carmy really took that, and like you could tell he was sitting with that and thinking about that until the moment he went into the freezer and was like trying to practice it and trying to put it into play, and literally just press send and call her. I was like, no, just do it. You could tell how hard that was for him. Like, it is not just apologizing. It's not in his nature. It's not what he was, or rather, it's not in his nurture. It's not what he was taught to do. It's not something he witnessed growing up. It wasn't modeled for him. He's really lost when it comes to making amends and moving forward. He really is so much more accustomed to just like putting it past him and just moving on, or rather just going on, but letting these things just sit there.
Right. And for furthering that too, I think when people have a hard time taking responsibility for their actions, that's a shame-based behavior. That's difficulty in making amends and in asking for forgiveness. often means that we don't believe that we're worthy of being forgiven. And it seems like that is still where Carmy is sitting, as particularly with Claire. He does have her on a pedestal, and their relationship on a pedestal in some way. And I don't think he feels like he is worthy of her forgiveness, and doesn't even dare to ask for it.
Doesn't even try to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like you've said too, it's just all or nothing thinking, and he can't put himself into it even a little bit because everything that he's doing is for the restaurant right now, so he can't even devote anything to it.
Right. And then the one final thing, like my main takeaway from this season, that we talked about in a different conversation, was this thread throughout the entire season by the facts of being haunted. And they show it to us in a really kind of playful, sort of annoying way, that they like kind of troll each other in their like sibling peer group. But I think as we see it in the backdrop of this season, I think it's a really good reminder that all of us, or particularly all of these characters, are haunted by something from their past. All of it contributes to their current context. And we see the way that what has happened to them, what they've lived through, what they've survived, still haunts them to this day, that they still carry that around with them like a heavy cloak, even now. And that I really appreciated seeing, and in the way that what happens to us does shape who we are and how we are. And if we don't address the haunting, that we could be haunted forever, in a way that's really detrimental to our present and our future. And I really, that really stuck with me. That felt like a profound message that they were trying to tell us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that wraps us up for this chat about season 3 of The Bear. Catherine, thank you so much for coming back to Reactivity TV, making a cameo. If you're a regular watcher of Reactivity TV, you know we reference Catherine all the time. So I imagine Catherine will be back again. If you have other show suggestions outside of The Bachelor and The Bear, drop them in the comments below. Or you can email us at reactivitytv@revivecfw.com for other episode suggestions. You can also follow us on Instagram at reactivitytv. You can follow along with Catherine at Catherine Van Eyck, me at Amy Albero LCSW, and you can follow Revive at ReviveCFW, all on Instagram. We will be back soon with more. Chris and I will be back each week with our regular reactions to this season of The Bachelorette beginning on July 8th, and we'll see you then. Bye.